"Captain," called the wireless operator. "The Ares are reporting the cutters are braking for the target." Fitzgerald nodded, unsurprised. "They're going to try and run," he declared, and the asteroid, rubble and dust ablating off it in great gusts, began to pick up speed. "Optics, keep the scopes trained on the target. Astrogation, keep their course tabulated. Engine room!" There was a rumbling clank from the voice bell at his side making the connection, and he leaned over to bellow into it. "We are giving chase, Commander. We need full light, full steam." Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mildra, and I will be your gaming monk for the evening. Years ago, I remember Paul Asher saying, "The greatest innovations in the history of mankind were done by people who had no idea what they were doing." It's a quote I've used both seriously and in jest in the years since, regarding the creative process or even the act of problem solving. However, I feel it can also apply to how people view genres of storytelling. I've been very critical with how the gaming public views fantasy, but that attitude applies equally to science fiction. The limitation is not about a limited view in terms of setting, but rather in the type of story that can be told. I've called this phenomenon large men with screwdrivers, where the focus is on technical people solving a technical problem. Obviously, this could be seen as a response to the more pulpy style of SF, which had been smeared for decades as low-grade at best and exploitation at worst. But you can go too far in the other direction, where you need to lean into so-called realism, i.e. the science in science fiction. That certainly has its place, but you can have too much of a good thing. And furthermore, no one style should be the dominant style, regardless of what some adherents would say. But with the gradually increasing interest in more pulpy approaches, this is as good a time as any to talk about Full Light, Full Steam. Created by Miriam Robern, I apologize if I mispronounced that, it depicts a kind of post-Victorian space opera, with life on Earth, Mars, Venus, and Mercury, under the tagline, "A role-playing game with character." And now it arrives at the steps of my monastery. How does it hold up? Let's find out. Full Light, Full Steam runs at 194 pages in a single-column format. Now let me get the obvious out of the way. There's no bookmarks in the PDF version. There's also a significant amount of white space to account for the sidebars throughout the book. The sidebars are nice, but I think the space given for them is a bit too large in my opinion. As a final note, I know some don't care much for the writing being done in-universe when it comes to the setting material. I don't agree with that mindset, as any means to help bring the setting to life is warranted, especially when you have one that isn't going to instantly translate or one that needs to stand on its own. This is why some games will double or triple down on their setting material, and writing in-universe can help it connect. The layout here is okay overall, but only for an early 2000s game where everybody was figuring out this whole PDF thing. Character creation is a point-based affair, and we'll explore this one again with Aldine Zabek Robinson. Now the first step is character points. This is rooted in the budget of points to spend on attributes and skills. The higher tier determines the initial power level, for lack of a better term. Modest characters are 75 points, competent characters are 100 points, 125 through 150 points are cinematic characters, and 200 points are larger-than-life characters. Of these, we'll go with cinematic, and thus start with 150 points. Now, I should note that character points are going to be a different affair from spoils, what the game calls experience points, which have different rates of progression. Anyway, the second step is thematic batteries, what the book describes as a word or phrase which describes an aspect of the character's personality, place in society, or role in the unfolding story. This is similar to aspects in games like Fate, and my issue with it is going to remain as much as it does in, well, Fate. For the purposes of this, we'll be skipping over this part. The third step is attributes and skills, which are upgraded with character points. Attributes start at rank 1, costing 5 points at rank 2, rank 3 costs 15 points, and rank 4 costs 30 points. These points are total investment, I should note. The 6 attributes are acumen, brawn, coordination, intellect, leadership, and savoir-faire. In our case, we have 4 in acumen, 2 in brawn, 3 in coordination, intellect, leadership, and savoir-faire. Now the fourth step is skills, which are upgraded with character points but at a different rate. A skill costs 1 point at rank 1, 3 points at rank 2, 6 points at rank 3, and 10 points at rank 4. There's a total of 30 skills, separated into either heroic skills, culture skills, or engineering skills. In our case, we have 3 in athletics, 1 in marksmanship, 4 in pugilism, 3 in tactics, 2 in acquaintances, 3 in diplomacy, 2 in duplicity, 2 in empathy, 2 in etiquette, 2 in intimidation, 1 in astrogation, 3 in ether, 2 in steam, and 1 in theory. The final step is creating your station, be it a port or a ship. This includes the type of ship or port that it is, the character's assigned role, and the superior officer. Character creation is alright, but I cannot say I'm a fan of everything beginning and ending with attributes and skills. I know this was a common thing in the 2000s. It bottlenecks the way that characters can interact with the mechanics, and this is compounded by the use of a blank check design in thematic batteries. I don't have a problem with this concept. What I do have a problem with is the lack of examples and/or guidance. I'm not saying this needed a rigid class system, but I do think some sort of special ability or something beyond just attributes and skills couldn't hurt. Be it some advantage or disadvantage system, those were everywhere at the time, or some sort of technique or application, just something to add some more personalization. Also, there's the inevitable problems with character point-based design, what I call the swim damn it approach, where you just have a set of points and are told to wing it. Shadowrun, I'm looking at you. But all in all, it's certainly of its time, but I can't help but feel like there's some missing X factor in this. Full Light Full Steam uses a d6 based die pool, one where every task is a contested roll of 4d6. In this, you roll 4d6 and use the sum of 2 dice based on the rank of the attribute and skill. In other words, roll 4d6, arrange them in order, and keep the highest die based on your respective attribute and skill. For example, suppose I'm making a roll with an intellect of 3 and a tactics of 2. After rolling the die, I get 1, 2, and 2 sixes. My intellect is ranked 3, so I take the third die from the lowest, and my tactics is 2, so I take the second lowest. This results in a total of 8. Most die rolls are based around a target number from 1 to 10, or are a contested affair. Situational modifiers in Full Light Full Steam take the form of promotion or demotion, essentially treating an attribute or skill as higher or lower than it actually is. In addition, the game takes a one-roll approach to determine if something is resolved, so there aren't really combat rules in the traditional sense. The primary monkey wrench in this is the batteries given to themes, the thematic batteries, if you will. These can be expended or discharged to promote attributes or skills when thematically appropriate, up to 4 times. These uses can be recovered or charged by demoting an attribute or skill at a rate of 1 rank per charge. The exception to this rule are the condition batteries, health, will, grace, and hull, which are recharged through rest. That's really the gist of things. I like the die setup, but the battery system is somewhat marred by the blank check design I mentioned previously. While a good GM will be able to overcome this, that's something that could be said about a lot of games, in fact almost every game I've covered on this channel. This game shares a lot of commonalities with several indie games that came out around the same time in the 2000s. In particular, a reliance on attribute skill formulas as the sole means of interaction with the mechanics, along with the dependence on GM fiat to make things work. This often results in a form of handbraking where there's not sufficient examples to guide the player or GM. I'd argue this is all the more crucial when you have a non-standard kind of setting, and Victorian space opera certainly qualifies. You need to go the extra mile to bridge the gap between the presented setting and how to put the table in it. That said, I'd give Full Light Full Steam a stamp of playable. It's by no means terrible for the time and has some really nice GM advice, but the reliance on narrative is going to put a lot of pressure on the GM's judgment, especially when the limits on thematic batteries and similar mechanics are not fully understood. I certainly wouldn't recommend it to a first-timer, but perhaps someone who has some background already. Though I'm sure some naval fans, especially classical navies, could brute force their way through this. Stay frosty.
In nomine